Welcome to Book 2 in the Horrors and Hoagies series, Tortured Souls. In this, we will cover Chapter 23. We encourage you to immerse yourself in the exciting events that unfold. From thrilling action scenes to heart-pumping moments of suspense, Tortured Souls is sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. We appreciate your support and hope that you continue to enjoy the journey we have in store for you. Chapter 23, Fleeing into the Arms of Death.
Max came to his senses amidst the chaos of the collapsing building. He saw the terrifying sight of flames and smoke everywhere he looked. He quickly regained his composure and assessed his situation, realizing he needed to run. He headed towards the stairs, but to his dismay, they were no longer there. Instead, he faced a raging inferno that had taken over the fire escape. The wind was howling through the gaping hole in the building, further fueling the flames. Then, he heard the sound of a truck outside. He knew Claus had come through. Coughing and struggling to breathe, he approached the shattered windows facing the street. He peered outside and saw the truck parked below him. With no time to waste, he took a deep breath and leaped towards the truck. He knew he could make it, and he did. Max shot free of the building and flew through the air with the grace only an experienced daredevil like himself could muster. After a seeming eternity, he landed with a roll on the top of the cargo truck. He smiled with a predatory grin as he slid over the far side and dropped to the pavement opposite the devastated building. 2 paces later, he swung himself up and into the passenger seat and yelled,
Beeil dich, lass uns jetzt gehen, Claus.
The truck didn't move. Max cleared the stray hair from his eyes as he peered at the driver. His smile faded. Siddiqui froze in terror. His mouth fell agape with his meaty hands on the wheel. He couldn't fathom how such a twist came to be, so he froze. Max's shock subsided quickly. He delved into his jacket to retrieve his reliable pistol, but to his dismay, it was nowhere. His gaze shifted from the vacant holster to Siddiqui, conveying a clear message. Max intended to kill him. Siddiqui shut his eyes, anticipating his impending fate at the hands of the enraged German. He kept his eyes shut as he heard his lethal companion open the car door and depart. Max took 3 steps away from the truck when he stumbled upon Claus's lifeless body. A sniper had taken him out from afar. Max felt a burning desire to avenge his Thulian brother and take down those responsible, but he knew it was a lost cause. He had to focus on survival and retreat for now. There was no room for anger, fear, or regret. He had to run and save himself. Max tumbling over the truck caught Polina's attention. She hurriedly approached the truck's cabin and discovered Siddiqui, visibly frightened, gesturing towards an alley. The lingering scent of the man who had fled still hung in the air. They would be the sole survivors, aside from Lookman's decaying body.
Domnul is present.
She mused to herself, a mischievous grin forming as she embarked on her pursuit. If she only roughed up the man a little, he could still provide her with some coherent answers. It was difficult to determine when you had only half beaten someone to death. Max ran until his lungs were about to burst, his legs became rubber, and his vision blurred. He had flown down alleys, between buildings, and over fences to gain distance and add obstacles for would-be pursuers. When he could run no further, he ducked around an alley corner and rested against the wall. His chest heaved and he hurt all over. The lack of shouts and footfalls told him he had escaped. He would have to keep moving and cover his scent. Werewolves were persistent bastards, even on their bad days. He had known this going into the mission. It was the main reason the vault heist he had given to Jimmy Blacktooth had led his people through storm drains. Before he arrived in Cairo to pick up Lookman, he knew the local creatures had a wolf policing group. Thulians always planned ahead. Max was now alone and exposed and had to find his way back to Canada. He was already planning his next move, which helped him stay calm and focused. Suddenly, a whistle interrupted his thoughts, causing him to become fully alert. He moved slowly and cautiously, not wanting to provoke whoever had made the sound. The area was bustling with dock workers, administrators, and company officials. Max eventually located the source, a blonde woman in a tight outfit. She stood 20 paces away and greeted him with a Russian accent and a smile, saying, "Guten Tag." She had a large rifle on her back and a holstered pistol under her thumb.
Are you part of the welcoming committee?
Max jabbed a thumb back toward the scene where he had escaped. The barbarically blonde beauty maintained a friendly smile as she replied.
Name. Ich bin Tilda Putzkalan.
He gave a nod and flashed a sincere smile. Judging by her ability to handle the equipment she was carrying, he estimated that she could fire at least one shot before he reached her. The odds were against him if she was a skilled marksman, but he reminded himself she was only a woman. He made up his mind to take the risk. Max couldn't take a single step before he lifted slightly off the ground. He struggled to breathe and couldn't form coherent words. His mouth hung open, resembling a startled fish, as he desperately tried to speak. A sleek and deadly punching dagger emerged from his chest. It had pierced through his ribs with precision, impaling his heart. Max was already dead. It was only a matter of time before his brain registered the grim reality. Polina had her pistol up and ready in an instant. She hadn't seen the other man who had cheated her out of her kill until he struck. She hadn't smelled him either. That was a surprise, as she had easily managed to track her prey's scent, even in the terrible weather. It was a mark against her pride as a hunter and a curiosity. Max fell limp. The deed was done. His killer shucked him from their blade like a chef would scrape meat off a cutting board. In one motion, the blade slid through a waiting handkerchief to emerge clean of its victim's blood. Such care for appearances fit the rest of him, standing in a prim uniform and at perfect attention.
Bad luck, old boy. Bad luck indeed,
Ashfield said, replacing his handkerchief in his breast pocket. He hadn't failed to notice the woman a few meters off. He would have to deal with her, as there could be no witnesses. Ashfield assessed his next target, a rain-soaked waif who appeared wild and downtrodden despite being armed with military hardware. Wanting to be polite before taking her life, he introduced himself with a greeting, only to be interrupted by her questioning. He couldn't help but think she was rude.
Why did you kill him? What do you want?
She blurted out. She had noticed his predatory eyes. She knew eyes like that well, the eyes of a true killer.
Not one for formalities, I see.
Ashfield took a step toward Polina and waved a dismissive hand toward Max's corpse.
I was following orders. He was a loose end to trim before I left your foul city.
Ashfield took another step.
He was, at least, until you arrived.
Ashfield conveyed his intentions through his cold and calculating eyes. He was satisfied he had conveyed his meaning to her when she adjusted her stance. Such a motion indicated uncertainty and fear. Ashfield took another step.
Who are you?
Polina demanded, ready to defend herself from the gentlemanly menace who so boldly advanced. Ashfield bowed and finished his introduction.
I am Major Charles Ashfield of the Queen's Special Forces.
He didn't bother to ask the woman's name. It wouldn't matter in a few seconds. Polina paled. The name Major Ashfield echoed in her mind, reverberating like a loud bell. It was a name she knew but couldn't place. Her thoughts raced, trying to piece together the puzzle of the past few days. She focused on the file she searched in Dom's office while waiting for him and Siddiqui. Among the papers, she had come across a mention of an issuing officer from MJ. QSF. At the time, she hadn't paid much attention to the initials, dismissing them as insignificant. The peculiar seal on the documents had seemed vaguely familiar, but she couldn't grasp its meaning. She had assumed it belonged to some bureaucratic civilian organization. Having snooped around Dom's work before, she had encountered numerous official-looking mission briefings from shady organizations. There had been no reason for her to suspect that this was a haunting reminder from the past, resurfacing to haunt them again. She had never encountered Ashfield during the war. Despite that, she despised him. She witnessed the assignments he had given Dom and his team. She witnessed the outcomes of his cruel and sociopathic behavior. The man was a beast. He was a beast who had attempted to kill Dom through callous disregard, if not with even more sinister intentions. He was a man deserving death. As Ashfield proceeded forward, she put a bullet through his head. Undeterred by the failed assassination attempt, Ashfield continued forward. The bullet fired from her gun had gone straight through him without causing harm, hitting a brick wall a few yards away instead. He couldn't help but grin at her shock. It was a small and selfish pleasure, but he enjoyed how his powers made his enemies feel helpless and powerless. It was empowering to see them realize how outmatched they were. He quickened his steps, sprinting for the final stretch. Polina fired 4 more shots as he approached. The bullets missed their mark, failing to hit his heart, lungs, and neck. Her precision impressed him as he raised his arm, ready to deliver a fatal strike. Polina's senses went into hyperdrive. The world appeared to slow as she absorbed information around her. With lightning-fast reflexes and instinct, she took her final shot as the assailant's knife was about to strike her chest, aiming to end her life. With luck, perfect timing, and expert marksmanship, the bullet found its mark. The knife shattered into pieces, its destructive force ripping through the assailant's hand and wrist, causing flesh to twist and bones to shatter in Ashfield's hand. He let out a cry of agony, tumbling through Polina. The fragments of his cherished knife, a possession he had fought to obtain, were held in higher regard than any individual he had encountered. It had been his most trusted confidant, his loyal companion, and the tool of his trade. The sorrow of losing his beloved friend overshadowed the pain of his torn flesh. After the close call, Polina bounced back and unleashed a series of kicks and punches. Unfortunately, they didn't hit him, as he had an insubstantial body. It made her more anxious. Nevertheless, her attacks diverted his focus from the broken weapon. When their eyes met again, she knew he wasn't going to stop until he killed her. She also had no way to hurt a ghostly assassin. She didn't want to stick around and let him complete the deed. She took off running. Not far off, he could smell the pungent odor of the dockside fish market. There would be plenty of people and places to hide among. She ran as hard as she could, glad for the traction of her combat boots. Combat boots would always be far superior to any slipper or heel. Ashfield composed himself. She was more intelligent than she appeared and surprisingly quick. Although it wouldn't protect her, it was worth acknowledging. His dominant hand was incapacitated, but his weaker hand would do the job. If necessary, he would strangle her. He began a brisk jog, ensuring he could see her as he pursued. Polina burst into the fish processing plant on the docks, causing workers to jump aside as she ran through the open airspace filled with crates, cleaning tables, and overhead conveyors. She plowed through obstacles until she was certain she was out of sight of the murderer. Catching her breath, she realized she needed a disguise and a crowd to safely exit the area without causing any further trouble. Before she dashed out of her hiding place, she noticed his absence. She cautiously scanned the area, taking in the calmness that had settled after the commotion of her arrival. Amidst the chatter of the people and the sound of rain pouring down, it seemed impossible to catch any trace of him. It felt as though he was standing behind her. Ashfield forcefully plunged a meat hook into Paulina's collarbone, piercing through her chest. The excruciating pain made her scream, but it quickly turned into a pained moan as Ashfield lifted her using the hook and flung her a few feet away to land beneath a carving table. Ashfield's focus on secrecy vanished. He no longer cared if anyone witnessed his actions. All he wanted was to eliminate this despicable woman. As a result of the attack, the shoulder strap of her long rifle snapped, causing it to drop and land at his feet. He grabbed the weapon with his uninjured hand and supported its weight with his injured arm. He swiftly aimed and pulled the trigger. The powerful recoil of the weapon intensified the pain in his broken wrist. She reacted quickly by knocking over the table to shield herself. Her rifle shot pierced through a wooden pallet, causing a shower of splinters to rain down near her side. As she hurriedly moved away, he staggered in agony. The rifle slipped from his grasp and fell, soon forgotten. After regaining composure, He continued his pursuit with unwavering determination. Polina scrambled to her feet and escaped. Picking up speed, she skillfully maneuvered between tables, causing chaos as workers panicked and fled. The place became a frenzy of people as those caught in the crossfire desperately raced to escape. Polina prepared to blend in and make her way out as she reached a corner with towering crates. However, to her horror, she accidentally impaled herself on a large carving knife. Ashfield had been patiently waiting for her, having seamlessly phased through the surroundings to position himself for the ambush. The air was knocked out of her as if hit in the chest, the knife embedded in her abdomen. Ashfield sneered, feeling a surge of triumph and self-righteousness. He had accomplished his goal, successfully eliminating the witch who had caused him so much pain. However, his victorious expression quickly transformed into bewilderment when she pushed him and his knife aside, darting off to escape his clutches. She experienced excruciating agony and should have perished. Only the adrenaline rush and her remarkable ability to heal kept her standing. Her thoughts raced faster than her diminishing speed as she replayed the ambush she had narrowly escaped. Right before turning the corner, she caught a whiff of him. Oddly enough, she couldn't detect his scent while he was chasing her. Then it hit her. She couldn't smell him when he was intangible, but his odor became overpowering when he solidified again. She didn't have a moment to think, so she hurried down a row filled with hanging grouper and tuna. She managed to get halfway through the narrow space before Ashfield appeared and cut her back. The pain made her cry out as she fell forward and landed on the dirty floor. Ashfield kept a close eye on her as she desperately crawled away. He observed with fascination as the fatal injury he caused began to heal. Regeneration, he mused silently. He had initially been perplexed by her remarkable ability to bounce back after his initial assault, but now understood she was not human but a loathsome monster. Even better, he commended himself. He relished eliminating a repugnant being for personal satisfaction and professional accomplishment. She clung desperately to her thoughts, fighting through pain and panic, preparing herself for the next assault. With only one round left in her pistol, she took cover and waited, determined to defend herself. And then it happened. He was behind her, ready to strike with his crude weapon. She swiftly dodged, causing the knife to hit the floor instead. Seizing the opportunity, she dropped to her back and pressed the barrel of her pistol against his forehead. Before she could pull the trigger, Ashfield swatted the gun away with his crippled hand. Instantly, regret washed over him as pain surged through his body. It caused him to retreat from Polina, his thoughts scattered as he yelled. Polina scrambled away again and headed for her pistol. Her pistol was now waiting a few feet from the central vat of rotting chum. After she made it to her gun, she turned around to sit on the floor with her back to the vat. Demo! She cursed aloud to herself. She was flanked on either side by large piles of rusted equipment. She had trapped herself. Ashfield regained his strength and could now prevent her from escaping. He noticed a knife on a nearby table and assessed the situation. Despite her ability to heal, she couldn't run much longer. It was clear that she was doomed. He decided that the only way to ensure his safety was to decapitate her, dismember her body, and throw the pieces into the vat with the rest of the waste. Polina's mind raced as she pondered her next move, and Ashfield's brief reflection gave her the opportunity she needed. All she had to do was wait for the perfect moment and hope her aim was steady. In an instant, Ashfield transformed into a corporal form and instinctively reached for his knife. He kept a vigilant eye on Polina, ready to react if she attempted to shoot him. To his relief, her gun was not pointed in his direction, leading him to believe that her mental sharpness had dulled since their initial encounter. But then something unexpected happened. Polina caught a whiff of Ashfield's presence. Fueled by her last ounce of agility, she swiftly aimed and fired her weapon. Ashfield barely had time to smirk when the overhead conveyor came crashing down on him. A deluge of fish guts flooded the area as the contents of the conveyor spilled out. Polina, drenched in the repugnant mixture up to her waist, her gun still smoking, couldn't help but burst into relieved laughter. Ashfield, on the other hand, recoiled in horror. The impact of the conveyor had dislocated his good shoulder, and chunks of entrails slid down his uniform, covering it in unimaginable filth. It was all too overwhelming. While he could overcome his injuries, the humiliation he felt was unbearable. Ashfield suddenly had a revelation: he had to escape from this wretched place. He would find another opportunity to harm the woman, but in a distant location. His mind was on the verge of insanity as he retreated, memories of his lost friend and his disheveled appearance clouding his thoughts. Even as he vanished into the pouring rain, Polina's laughter continued to haunt him. The daring trio braved the elements of wind, rain, and lightning as they sped down the street. Thomas, wearing goggles, let out a wild laugh as he shifted gears on his motorcycle, which roared like a train as it raced through the city. Not accustomed to three-wheeled vehicles, Dom held onto the sidecar tight with fear as they narrowly avoided colliding with another car, determinedly pursuing their target. Dom struggled to load his ancient firearm, his vision impaired by the relentless downpour. Despite his impaired sight, he had successfully inflicted several fresh wounds on Old King Tut during their chase. Following Thomas's advice, he incorporated a handful of obsidian shards into the ammunition to enhance its impact. Jackie, healed from his wounds, clung tightly to Thomas's waist and was having an absolute blast. He shouted and yelled as they zoomed past cars, startled pedestrians, and maneuvered through congested streets. Although he could go faster on his own, he thoroughly enjoyed the ride and being a part of the excitement. Jackie cheered with unbridled enthusiasm, reminiscent of a child relishing a roller coaster. Thomas skillfully maneuvered the bike around the next corner, causing the sidecar to lift off the ground. Dom tightly gripped the rim of the sidecar with one hand, holding on for dear life. Without wasting a moment, Dom aimed his newly loaded pistol at the mummy before the bike regained balance. Their coordination tested as they closed in on their target as a sedan hurtled towards them, flipping end over end. The mummy had sent this unexpected gift to hinder their pursuit, taking advantage of the chaotic traffic. With a stroke of luck, Thomas dodges the front of the vehicle that crashed down a few feet from his bike. The vehicle's momentum helped him avoid it as it tumbled over their heads. It was such a close call that anyone on the bike could have easily touched it. The bicycle abruptly stopped, narrowly avoiding a fire hydrant, causing everyone on board to sigh in relief. A short distance away, the mummy paused to admire its accomplishment before resuming its sprint toward its destination. The creature transformed into a more jackal-like form with each stride. It shed its scales and soared, which crashed through a nearby shop's parlor window, terrifying the customers. The monster was racing towards the dockside area of town at an astonishing speed. Amidst the roaring storm, Dom raised his voice to ask, was it capable of doing that before? Thomas shrugged as he moved his bike from the hydrant to resume their chase. Once he had the right angle, he inquired, where is it headed? It seemed like a rhetorical question, as he didn't wait for an answer and immediately revved the bike to pursue the creature. In the distance, the mummy let out a haunting howl. Polina dragged herself out of the fish plant, feeling immense pain despite her healing abilities. Her wounds, especially the deep gouge from the meat hook, slowly began to mend. Taking a moment to gather herself, she glanced at the questionable contents of the oversized water basin. It was a basin used to clean tools or wash hands. Nevertheless, it was still cleaner than she was. She rolled to her side and immersed as much of her body in the water as possible. The rainwater was colder than she had anticipated. She hurriedly moved around the bucket, trying to stay in the water for as long as she could bear without turning into a popsicle. As her bones numbed from the icy water, she propelled herself out and clumsily flopped onto the grimy work floor. She stretched out on her back, allowing the rain to wash away some of the grime. While gazing at the sky, she observed the slow drift of the clouds. Her eyes followed the peculiar formations as they moved across the urban horizon until she spotted something that concerned her. The storm that had engulfed Luqman's hideout had finally calmed down. However, a new, more furious force of nature had taken its place. The force was like a raging torrent of lightning and dark clouds, tearing through the city streets with fury. The city lights illuminated its path, allowing her to track its movement. It was swiftly making its way towards the dockside, Luqman's location, Lorenzo, and her lover's wolves. She quickly grabbed her rifle, but the broken sling made it difficult to carry. She had to take a moment to fix the sling to carry the weapon on her back again. Without wasting more time, she snatched a worn-out medical bag from a nearby shelf and hurried away as fast as possible.